Now we are about to begin our third session of the webinar, and this is on STEMs, women engagement in the STEMs, and how to make change in the workforce. We have a number of speakers here, and we will introduce you to the speakers. I just want to say that it's a very exciting time because STEM is one of the, critical initiatives that's going on all across the globe, especially, the science, technology, with the changes that are happening with our, we see in the last 1.5 years with the COVID situation, we see a lot of transformation. We see new startups coming up all over the globe, especially in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. We've seen a lot of changes happening. There's a transformation to digitalization. There's been the usage of mobile phones, mobile technology, and of course the computer. So I want to just say that it's a time where we, in this panel discussion, will hear from different panelists. We have a number of excellent panelists from Bangladesh as well as Sri Lanka. So let me introduce you to our first panelist, who is the Rubaba Dola, the Country Managing Director of Oracle, Bangladesh. We have also with us today Mr. Mahtabuddin Ahmed, Managing Director and CEO of Robi Excited Limited. We have with us also Ms. Sashini Jawardina. She's the Director of Aitken Spence PLC and Chairperson of Aitken Spence Hotel Managements Limited. And of course, we have Dr. Mark Smith, who is the Director General of International Water Management Institute. So, and of course, the moderator for this session will be Ms. Vani Chandra Sena, Manager of Diversity, Inclusion and Wellbeing, London Stock Exchange Group of Sri Lanka. I would like to introduce first our panel speaker, who is Ms. Rubaba Dola. Rubaba, are you on board?
Yes, I am. Hi, how are you?
Okay, great. Great to see you, Rubaba. Thank you for joining us in this very, very important session, I must say, in this times of digitalization and transformation that's going on all across the globe. And specifically for South Asia, it's more important because we were a bit behind, if I may say so, apart from India. And now we see a very big change. But how can we engage women in there will be an issue that we will discuss today, but I want to just introduce the participants to you. You've been the MD of Oracle Bangladesh, and you have an MBA in economics, and is a proponent of women empowerment and women's rights issues across Bangladesh. And you have also received the South Asia Business Excellence Award for Women's Leadership. Today, we want to hear from you how you envisage women and girls getting up the ladder. And you can also give us a bit of your experience, how you have become the MD of Oracle and what it took for you to get there, because there has been challenges behind it. And we want to hear, and I know the participants here today want to hear from you, how you think that women what roles they should sort of play in this environment, and how can we create an enabling environment for reducing the gender gap and bring about inclusion and gender diversity. So Rubaba, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me for this discussion. I'll just start off by giving an introduction about myself. You've already introduced me, but I've worked in telecom for almost 20 years now. And at the moment, I'm heading the Oracle Bangladesh office in Bangladesh under the ASEAN region. And as you asked me first that what was my experience in this particular field, because I've been working in ICT for the last 22 years, so to speak. So in 1998, when I actually joined telecom, at that time, we really didn't have that many women role models But at that time, telecom itself was a new industry, and we had very little understanding and knowledge about what impact and benefit it would bring to empower people and to connect, Bangladesh to the rest of the world. And over the period of about 19 years when I was in telecom, I realized that when I joined, I didn't have that many women in the tech field to look up to. However, there were some few women in service units, for example, in customer service or in HR. But over the period of time, in last 10 years, I do see more and more women taking interest into it. And what is more promising is the fact that when we speak to girls in schools, we do see that they have keen interest in pursuing their career in STEM. The only thing that we see is missing is that this interest in STEM and getting into a job and getting that kind of a position in a particular organization, there's a leaking pipeline, right? And that's what we need to really fix. And if you ask me how to fix that, well, we have been working on this for a long time, various organizations, even Bangladesh as well. And as you know, the Bangladesh government strategy to achieve the United Nations SDG goal and to become the high income country by 2041 hinges on capital development and also human resource development. So a big part of our population, 50% of our population is women, and a big chunk of our population is under the age group of 24. So it's extremely important for us to focus on that particular segment. And that's why starting with education, starting with changing of mindset of the young girls who are now just going into school and then learning more about what opportunities this STEM field brings for them. Because I feel that STEM is the fastest area for any woman to really gain economic independence. And that is where we have to focus. It's not only for the women, but for the country's economic development, we need more women participation. And if you now look into 10 years from now, or even now when we are talking about fourth industrial revolution, we see more and more jobs, almost 90% of the jobs will be STEM related, because IT has now become an enabler, right? At every aspect, whether you become an entrepreneur, whether you're working in a corporate as a professional, you will need to have that kind of skill set. So from our side, the entire focus is on building this skill set and getting the resources ready for the next 10 years, not only what is happening now, because we have to be ready for the next 10 years of digital transformation that we are going to foresee in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rubaba. I just want to quickly introduce the other speakers and then hand over to the moderator to take the discussions forward. We stay on because we're going to ask you a lot of questions. The participants will want to know a lot of things. So our next, we will have the next speaker, Mr. Mahtabuddin Ahmed, the MD and CEO of Robi Axiata Limited. He has been with Robi for a long time and is really involved in the next generation of digital company, which you, Rubaba, just mentioned, that digitalization is not for now, it's for the next years to come as well. And he also serves as director in Nepal's #1 mobile phone operator, which is called Netcell Private Limited. He has 17 years experience in Unilever in different capacities in leadership positions. And Mr. Mahtab also holds a master's degree in accounting from Dhaka University. Currently, he's the president of the Association of Mobile Telecom Operators, AMTOB, and holds other leadership roles. And with the third speaker that we have today is from Sri Lanka. She is Miss Stashani Jayawardena. She started her career in Icon Spence Group Limited for 10 years. She has been, in 2017, she was recognized as the Hotel and Hospitality Sector Gold Award at the top 50 Professional Career Women Awards in Sri Lanka. She He is a graduate from the UK and has worked as an intern under Hillary and Bill Clinton in the United States in 2003. Our last speaker would be Dr. Mark Smith. Dr. Smith has been working as the DG, Director General of International Water Management Institute, and brings more than 25 years of experience in research, program management in water resource, agriculture, climate, and sustainability. He earlier worked in IUCN, working across Asia, Africa, Latin America. He holds a PhD from the University of Edinburgh and also another master's in climatology from University of Guelph. So over to you, Bani Chandra Sena, who will be moderating the rest of the session. Thank you. Go ahead, Bani.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. Welcome to all the panelists. And like you mentioned, my name is Bani and I will be moderating today. Let me just put it on speaker. Okay. We're talking about the STEM gap, empowering women and girls in science, technology, engineering, and math. If I may start with you, Mark, if you could share with us the landscape of supply of STEM women graduates available for your company in Sri Lanka, and also kind of share with us how it is in the other locations of IMI that in terms of a comparison.
Sure, thank you so much, Bani, and thank you to the organizers for including International Water Management Institute, IMI as we call it, in this event today. It's a real pleasure to be involved in this really important conversation. So maybe just as a kickoff, Bani, a few words just about IMI, because we're not a private sector company like many of the participants in the event today. We're a scientific organization, an international scientific institute. We work on what we term research for development, so very applied science in the fields of agriculture, irrigation, climate change, climatology. There's a big information technology component to that, and digital innovation. So a crossover with some of the other speakers, as well as social science and gender studies and governance and economics is also part of what we do here at IMI. We have our headquarters here in Sri Lanka. We have in total in our organization about 250 staff, about 125 of those are researchers or scientists. We have 6 offices in different countries in Asia, 4 offices in Africa, as well as an office in Rome and in Washington, D.C. We're part of a much bigger scientific organization called the CGIAR, which is a network of international institutes focusing principally on agriculture, and we're the water component of that larger organization. So the CGIAR is really like a confederation of institutes with about 10,000 staff worldwide. So I'll give you just a few reflections then, as you said, Bani, to get the conversation moving about our experience with women in STEM and indeed the way that relates to Sri Lanka and the recruitment of women into our organization here in Sri Lanka. There was a very interesting paper published last year. Maybe this just helps to set the stage for the challenge that's before us. A very interesting scientific assessment published last year, giving a lot of statistics on women in STEM and the gap that exists. And it was mostly focused on academia, so women working in universities and so on, and indeed organizations like ours. And it concluded that from their assessment that worldwide men outnumber women 2 to 1 in science, and that's similar across most geographies in the world, a couple of exceptions, but outnumber 2 to 1. That there is also a gap in productivity. So in academia, of course, people like to measure productivity in terms of the numbers of papers that you publish. And so they found a gap in productivity with about 25% higher publication across papers published across a career for men than women. But, and this is the really important part, that productivity was indistinguishable between men and women for active scientists, and the gap was down to the dropout rate for women, and therefore the career length that women have in science. And I think Rubaba referred to this in her opening comments about the leakiness of this career path for women, and this worldwide study indeed bore that out, suggesting, of course, therefore, that it frames a challenge in terms of recruitment, but also retention then, and really understanding what is driving that, what is causing that. Maybe turning now just briefly to our organization and to this larger network of CGIAR. Here in IMI, we have about 33%, 1 in 3, so it matches this global number. 1 in 3 of our research staff are women, and of our professional cadre of staff, about 42% are women. For the CGIAR more broadly, working globally, this is the organization with the full 10,000 staff, about 29% of researchers across the 10,000 staff are women, and about 39% are working in the professional grades. So our staff, we draw upon a global talent pool, bringing in scientists to IMI, to our institute, from across the world, but that includes Sri Lanka. I'll come to that in just a moment. We recognize, and we'll talk about this more as we go forward in the discussion, that there's great value in ensuring that we have diversity in our organization, whether that's to do with cultures, whether that's to do with ensuring equality between men and women, because our business, like many of those, like I suspect all of those in the discussion today, our business is innovation that's based around creativity. Creativity is driven by a diversity in critical thinking. So if everyone's the same, you're going to get much narrower critical thinking, and you're going to get less innovation. So fundamentally, we recognize that diversity is, and having a broad talent pool to draw upon is a core success driver for our institution, as well as being, I think we'll all agree, the right thing to do. So in terms of Sri Lanka, our experience actually, and your question referred, Bani, to the supply of graduates. And so I asked my colleagues in HR for our experience in recruiting scientific interns into IMI here in Sri Lanka. And it threw up some interesting figures that, which was that over the last 2 years, 2020 and 2019, of 37 research interns recruited by IMI in Sri Lanka, so Sri Lankan staff, 30 out of those 37 were women, and only 7 were male, which in the previous session, I did, when I first logged in, I saw the statistics that someone presented around the link, the transition in Sri Lanka of women participating in higher education through to then participating in the workforce, and the drop off that occurs somewhere along that pipeline. And so perhaps our experience here in IMI reflects that a little bit. A good supply of scientifically trained people coming out of universities that we are able to tap into here at IMI. But perhaps the experience is that then that participation drops off later on in people's careers, which reflects the broader global experience as well. And just to round that out, then here at IMI, we do also have, just to be clear, we also have a good number of women scientists from Sri Lanka in our mid-level research roles, as well as in our senior leadership as well. We have a diverse international staff here, but it does include Sri Lankans across those different grades amongst our researchers. So let me stop there. There's more to talk about, but I'm sure we'll take that up as we go along to the remaining questions. So Bani, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Since you did have so many stats and HR had been helpful, would you be able to give a comparison against the 30 against 37 towards the mid-level researchers and scientists also? Do you see tapering down like all the research shows? Does it confirm that?
Yes. No, it certainly confirms that. Yes.
Okay.
We see that, and I think there's a particular challenge, and we should explore it about mid-career. Actually, that study that I referred to showed that the dropout rate occurred across careers. So at different stages of careers, you had this dropout rate, and that's what we see as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark. If I may move it to the Bangladesh perspective a little bit, since we did already hear from Rubaba, can we move to Marta? Marta, if you could just share your experience with regards to supply of STEM into the telco industry, and what kind of numbers, if you have the numbers to share, or what is the general trend that you see?
Okay, let's start from the end. Yes, the trend is upward. I think that's a good news. And what Rubaba at the beginning also said, the future is depending on that step and, fourth industrial revolution and all this stuff. And the good part is, I'll talk about Ruby part and also talk about our government part. Our government also understands the importance of it, and they're doing a lot of activities around that. And Ruby being one of the top, telco and also business house. So our responsibility is not only limited to Ruby alone, but our responsibility is also to work with government to fulfill their SDG goal. So that's the way we work. Now, if I talk about Ruby, yes, Ruby, the women participation in STEM areas, it is growing very, very fast. In 2016, if I talk about of the total hire, it was single digit, mid-single digit, and now it has gone up above 25%. So I think that's where you can understand how it is progressing. It is only possible when the supply of women resources are high. So I think that is happening. Of course, from Ruby perspective, we also keen to give preferences to them for good reasons. Telco believes in creativity and innovations, and that is come out of diversity. And I'm sure many of you understand. We don't like to go for gender diversity simply because it's a good buzzword and good thing to show to the external world. It's not the case. Actually, they bring a lot of creativity and diversity that we need in our organizations, which are futuristic in nature. And we have seen, and if you look at, if I try to, link this, the concentration or penetration of women in our workforce with our performance, you'll be surprised to know there is a very positive correlation. So more the diversities are, the better the performance in our organizations. And it's not only that, they are well capable as well. If I cannot think of last 10 years, I've never seen any women representation or gender representation in top level management. Yes, there were at, lower level pretty much, but not at the high level. But if I can see now, I have representation in the board, in the management committee, EVPs, all the areas we have got a decent representation of women. So that shows supply is not at the entry point, but supply of that kind of resources is there at different levels. So senior to junior, everywhere. So I think that is another positive thing that is happening. And most of the corporate houses in Bangladesh are also working towards that. And, that is one part is, bringing them in. Supply is there. We are trying to recruit them. But having said that, if I look at the total base, it's still women's are, in terms of percentage, around 27% behind men. So there is a big lag out there, which we need to work on. And you can tell me, okay, why, despite you're putting so much of concentration on recruiting and retaining women employees, what is the problem? Why still there is such a big gap? And we did a massive audit, and literally it was an audit that we did to figure out why this gap is still there yes, it has been bridging, but not to the speed that we were expecting. And one of the critical thing was retention of those employees. And a lot of interesting came out of this, that exercise. One was that, in Bangladesh, I'm sure South Asia, the culture will be pretty similar. Whenever they get married, that's the time they are in a dilemma whether to continue the career or focus on the new life. Then when the kids comes, then there's another dilemma that comes. So many such social issues were there. So out of that, we figured out a couple of things. And in most of the corporate houses, there is no there is a standard grievance process, but not focusing on women. So a lot of interesting came out, and we started addressing one after another. Like Ruby is the first company in Bangladesh, to the best of my knowledge, where we have chief women officer who addresses all the women related issues, that all the issues they have, she takes care of that. We have designed, our what is it, a care system to take care of pregnant women, and so many activities like that we have to address that. So I can go on and on for as far as what Ruby has been doing to retain those resources, but I'll move into a bit of what we are collaborating with government and universities to ensure that. I can give you the top two institutions of the country at this point of time for delivering or supplying that kind of resources is IBA, Institute of Business Administrations under Dhaka University. We have created a lab within that, innovation lab. We have done that with CMA, ICMA. So in addition that we are doing it that with Buet universities and more. So all this stuff that we have been doing to encourage that women to come into that area, we are providing that facilities in partnership. And recently, one thing we have done, I think I would like to share that story, and I'm quite excited about it. That is with ICT Ministry. In Bangladesh, Ruby has only BD Apps platform. I don't know whether you have heard of BD Apps. It's a app storing platform. And currently we have the 12,000 developers, and out of that 20% are women. And that is coming out of concerted effort to work with different universities. So 20,000, and our target is to take it to 35% by 2025. And currently it has been declared National App Store by ICT Ministry. And our objective is to take it to 35%. And that's how we believe, considering the opportunity that we have, we need to work on that. So that is one big thing we are working on. And I believe it will not only ensure the future demand, but also it will ensure the penetration of women in our organization. And the other area that we are working with ICT Ministry is rescaling. A lot of women currently are there. They are more vulnerable than others in terms of losing job. So if you don't reskill them, they will not be able to survive in this changing environment. And that is also another area that we are working with ICT Ministry by organizing different programming, blockchain, artificial intelligence related courses. So, one part we are working on supporting women to come. There are sufficient supply, I would rather say increasing trend of supply of that kind of resources. We are doing some specific activities to encourage them. And we are also working in collaboration with government and others to ensure that it sustains and reskilling happens. Over to you,
Banta, and thank you. So sustainability is the element, and the fact that you're working with the government, I think, is one of those best practices that Sri Lanka is also beginning to work on. And one point I'd like to just reiterate from what I heard you say is the piece about the App Store and women having that opportunity, and you seeing positive numbers, because that's actually entrepreneurship. So that actually gives women the flexibility to be able to work within sometimes the restricted environments in some of our Southeast Asian countries. Thank you so much for that. If I may now move on to Stashani. Stashani, you kind of bring a different perspective, since hospitality is a very different industry compared to the speakers we have at the moment, and Aitken Spence has more than just hospitality. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the supply side towards the sectors you are familiar with, so that we get a perspective from there as well?
Yes, so Spence is one of the first signatories and conglomerates to sign on to the Women's Empowerment Principles since 2011. And we are on the Gender Working Committee and also part of the local UN Global Compact Network and part of TGE. So women empowerment has been a part of our working ethos for a couple of years now, and from the very beginning, I would say. What we find are a couple of things across the conglomerate, because we have various sectors, and I'm proud to say actually 41% of our workforce, that is 14,000 Spenconians, spread across Oman, India, Fiji, Sri Lanka, and Maldives, are female. So 41% are female spread across all those countries. And 40% of our group supervisory board are females. And we do have to improve in terms of women representation in management positions, I would say, because it's only 20% of our workforce that are in assistant manager and above positions. So just to give you a snapshot, one of the things we find when trying to recruit individuals is the unintentional biases stemming from gender stereotypes that prevents from girls getting those opportunities when they do enter into the workforce. If I take Spence elevators within the conglomerate, we recently hired 2 female workers as elevator technicians, and they were able to get very hands-on experience with us here at Spence head office. And in a conversation, we found out that in their previous jobs, they have been stuck behind a desk, taking data and so on and so forth, because their previous employers had not believed in their capability to handle those technical tasks. So with the experience with us, they got a career boost, and they were able to actually seek far more lucrative opportunities elsewhere. We have faced community perceptions, social and community perceptions. So there's a dearth of female representation in the tourism sector due to the stigma associated with being in the tourism industry or the hotel industry. Society tells women that they are being successful in job is considered as typically masculine or somewhat less feminine. And this could also influence the choice girls make in their career. So what I find in speaking to my colleagues within the tourism and hospitality sector is a lot of them tell me, is it safe? Safety is a factor for them. And bluntly, I've been told, will I be able to marry well? Because this seems to be a concern for the parents, for the brothers and sisters alike of female employees working for us. So, we feel some key factors preventing high female representation in STEM jobs also can sometimes be the case, given these similar areas in terms of concerns cropping up. So in the hospitality sector specifically, how we handle the safety issue is to establish proper special accommodations, especially for the female employees, mentored by the senior employees, so the juniors get a proper mentorship, they feel safe, they feel comfortable. One of the properties we did this, we started this off, was at Heritage Kandalama, one of our premier properties. As a property, we've always engaged in recruiting from the immediate community, but we felt we needed to, specifically concentrate on the females. So we invited their families to observe the accommodation, to observe the place of work, to meet the colleagues. So they are assured and they see that their mother, daughter, sister, wife are working in a safe working environment. And during the opening, I was very comforted to, hear that, that everyone who came to see the working environment felt confident in sending their daughters, their wives and aunts and sisters to work with us, and because our own female cadre actually expressed the fact that they've never felt unsafe within our hotel property. So that was very, very encouraging. And I genuinely do hope to see more females applying for job roles within the STEM areas within the hotel industry. For example, our engineering division, our IT division. I was just speaking to my head of IT today and said, we need to increase our female participation in the IT sector as well. And I've given him a target now, stemming from the session today as well, when I realized the statistics. So I really, really want to see, we really want to change the perception and get them more involved. And I remember having this discussion with Bani yesterday as well, and telling that I see a lot of the female workforce within the group, when I talk to my colleagues, when they have their second child, they seem to drop out. So whether this is hospitality or any other sector, I feel there is a pattern, at least this is what I've experienced and I've seen. And what they genuinely tell me is the difficulty of, handling two children and the lack of help in terms of, it's better off for them to stay at home and look after the children, because it's a matter of, one, affordability, lack of maybe infrastructure, things that help them out in that sense. Again, it may be a personal decision a female makes, which I'm completely fine by, because I know some of the female cadre has genuinely told me, look, our children go out into the workplace. This is the future generation of the country. So I need to make sure I mold a proper citizen, a good, responsible citizen, and, raise a good child to contribute to society. So I do respect that. But I also see the fact that female needs a lot of support. And from my part and a part of a lot of the heads, where we can personally, we talk to them, we identify any personal challenges they face, and we do, support them and equip them as much as we possibly can to ensure they progress in their careers and give them proper learning opportunities. So hopefully we can improve our numbers and, set some proper targets now in the future, like I said.
Thank you. Stefan, you bring up a good point, and I was actually going to go into recruitment and retention, but I think I'm going to just leave that for a moment and touch upon the element that I think both we see in Sri Lanka as well as Bangladesh, which is very much the environment. It really sounds like all your companies are doing good work towards, attracting, retaining. But I think the more important conversation worth having for the next 15 minutes would be the environment that these women in general grow up in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. So what I mean by that is, if you think of it, there is the whole education awareness component. And then I also think there's a lot of social perception, cultural nuances, etc., that almost make women have to make those decisions of having to drop out and, focus on family first. Things like that are culturally sort of generations of culture kind of coming in. So if I may now open back to the panel, and maybe let's start with Rubaba. Can you share a little bit about what Bangladesh is doing, whether it be with the NGOs, whether it be government directly? I think Marta mentioned a few of those things, but a little bit more about what the social perception changes, awareness is being done, because what I see is we're doing a lot of work. Everybody's doing a lot of work towards empower. But what about the rest men in this conversation, just as much as the women? So if I may switch now to Rubaba, and if you could maybe share what's happening in Bangladesh towards changing that social construct and mindset.
Yes, I think before I get into the actual issue that we are facing in Bangladesh and what we are doing, there's certain facts that I would like to share with you. As you may know, that Bangladesh is actually ranked #1 when it comes to gender parity by World Economic Forum within the South Asian neighbors. and we are ranked 50th out of 139 countries. So that gives a good start for us to look into what are we doing for gender parity, equality, right? And apart from that, the government had taken successively, 5-year plan where the main focus was on gender equality, so that we have equal number of women going to school, scholarships were given, allowances, stipend were given to women so that they go to school and learn, and especially focus on these various subjects that we are talking about. Sorry, I'm having some electricity issues, so I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Apart from that, there are various organizations. I've been part of an organization called BWIT, Bangladesh Women in IT, where we have professionals, entrepreneurs, policymakers, all women. And the main objective of that particular association is to, of course, create awareness around what opportunity lies for these girls to pursue a career in STEM, and also to show role models. And I think that's extremely important, because if you don't know what is our future, we really wouldn't know what these kind of subjects can bring. Because as I said earlier, the girls are interested, but then when they want to really think about it as a career goal, they think, will I get a job? Will I get the right position? Will I get the right pay? So these are the areas where we are focusing. Bangladesh is also, carrying out various programs for pay parity. Okay, and there also we have scored very high and in the top amongst the Southeast Asian nation. So another thing is that the awareness is not only for the girls, but also for their parents, because many of these girls are dependent on their parents, because they give them those kind of advices and direction. The other part, extremely important, where I think we are lacking is education. Education meaning the educators, the teachers. Are they well equipped? Are they properly trained to be able to convince and encourage young girls to take up these subjects? So that's also extremely important. And for that, I'd like to mention that Oracle Academy, we have faculty across the world, and we have materials for educators that they can use to teach students properly. The students get free membership into Oracle Academy and learn about STEM subjects. So they learn about computing, and that really gives them that kind of first access to what ICT can bring, to what STEM subjects can actually do for them. Another very important aspect, which probably is felt now, is that why women themselves are not that keen is also maybe they don't understand if there's any purpose behind this. Getting into STEM. I'll tell you a bit about it, because we have all spoken about diversity and it brings innovation, right? And we know that all the innovative companies are having diverse culture within their organization. That's something through survey we have been able to unearth, right? But at the same time, what we see is that when women are wanting to become maybe leaders in certain organization, they see that leaking point that I was talking about, the pipeline, right? So once they get into a job, after that, getting a managerial job is a big step forward. And that is where the unconscious biases come in. Okay, there are many areas where we see that they're not given the job because they think as a woman, they will not be able to carry it out. They're not given the right position, thinking that the rest of the men, because majority probably would be men that woman would be maybe leading, would not really accept a woman as a leader. So there are all these unconscious biases that are there where we need to make some change. We need to also make a change within the girls from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Because the perception is that I don't have the ability, the system is not supportive, and hence I will not be able to pursue STEM career. But if you get into a growth mindset, then you would think that actually I can acquire the skills and have those abilities, and I can push, I can make sure that my voice is heard, so that the system changes to accommodate whatever is required to give equal opportunity to women. So these are the things that I would like to highlight. So I told you about BWIT. There's another association called BASIS, and they have a special wing for women in tech. Okay, so they deal with software and technology, and they are also pursuing various programs. We have a large pool of freelancers and majority of them are focused on tech-related freelancing services, whether it's developers, graphic designers, or whether it is just coders. And that is where we need more and more women. And that's why we're also targeting that we have more women as freelancers so that they have the flexibility of work. And of course, at the same time, they have the means of earning, or being independent, financially independent. The other aspect I would like to just highlight here, and this is about Oracle itself, is that we have 135,000 employees across the world, and 30% of the employees in the workforce is women. In the management team, we have 25% of the management leaders as women. And most importantly, our group CEO of this tech giant is Safra Katz, a very known person in tech industry in Silicon Valley. And so she is leading it. So you can understand that it boils from the top. The entire thing is disseminated from the top, and hence we are all accountable to ensure that we have given equal opportunity. So we are very gender neutral when it comes to any kind of roles that we are trying to recruit in. And we often say that it's only based on competency and performance. If we see that we get less number of resumes put in for any particular job, we again wait for more and more women to come in so that we have at least equal number of resumes put in, and we then carry out our screening process and recruitment process. So these are the things that we are doing. And there are various NGOs in Bangladesh, as you know, various UN organizations, the American embassy here, they're also very active. Everybody is working together to provide this service. Oracle has also partnered with 7 universities in Bangladesh so that we can provide that access to STEM-related education and also educate the trainers. So these are the things that we are doing, and I think we'll talk more about what steps to take in future, to ensure that this gap is minimized.
Thank you, Rubaba. So I think in summary, I think education is the key, and education not just with the girls, but also the environment, whether it be the parents, whether it be the wider population, because it is very much about arming everybody with knowledge, because people are convinced differently. So thank you very much for that. If I may now move into a little bit about what companies are doing. I think Robi also mentioned before in our prep session about some of the work being done towards making sure not only do you hire, but you also actually support leadership and encourage them climbing the ladder within the company. Marta, do you want to share a little bit about what happens in Robi, and then I'll move to the Sri Lankan examples?
That is in regards to?
With regards to succession planning, there is
Okay.
a bit of work that was being done, and we spoke about it yesterday, in terms of you do hire, but hiring, like everybody said, the stickiness means we do need to retain them and try to get as many into leadership. And I think there were some specific activities that I thought were worth talking about.
Okay. I think a lot of things we do. I think one of the most important thing for Robi was to make a cultural change, because the mindset that you need in a telecom kind of organizations, which we claim it to be more of a digital organization rather than a typical telco organization. So there you need, first of all, change in the mindset. And Rubaba has covered quite a bit of point, like, there are social and cultural issues in terms of the certain challenges only women faces in our part of the world, whether they can do it, technical job is not for them, So there are a lot of myths and I would say false belief works in leaders' mind and people's mind. So therefore, what Robi has done, Robi has specific counseling and coaching program for them. So that is number one thing that we have done, because if you don't change their mindset, if you don't bring that belief in themselves, they are equal or better than others, we will not be able to achieve our long-term goal. So that is one thing that we have done. Second thing is we have what we call is a Red Talk program, like TED Talk. There we specifically bring all women leaders in our office and share their experiences to boost up their confidence as to how can they can really learn and get inspiration from the great leaders, women leaders in the country. Like, Rubana Haq, you may have heard of, she is the BGMA chairman precedent. So that kind of figures we bring in to do that. And in our succession planning, there's each and every manager, like there is a target given to each and every divisions. You need to have X percentage of improvement over a period of time. Say, for example, in Bangladesh, women working in sales, I'm getting a bit of out of STEM to share an extreme case, that in case of sales, it is a myth, like sales is not for women. And it is shocking. I've seen in Sri Lanka, that kind of, that kind of things I've not seen. Even in the retailer, I've seen the women retailer working, they're at every level. But unfortunately in Bangladesh, it was not the case. So 2017, as a matter of experiment, we first time recruited 3 women, and currently we have around 9 to 10. And that was a very successful experimentation that we have done. And we have seen their performance is way better than many of our men colleagues. So that is another thing we have done. So wherever there is less presence of women, we are pushing them into that. There are less presence of women in finance. So we are pushing a strong target for them to do that. And only way to do that is succession planning. And for women, for our, we have got one of the program called GT, or Young Talent Program. There they have a clear, at the time of recruitment, for those women, we tell them within 2 years, you'll move from GT to manager. And another 2 years, if they deliver basic performance, they will become general manager. So that kind of succession plan also we have, so that we can retain them for a longer period of time. And one experience I can share with you, based on my experience in Ruby, even in my experience in Unilever, whatever women we recruit, no way outside other, they're far better than at times than the men's. So I think there's no issue in terms of having confidence in them, but at times bringing their own confidence in themselves and solving some of the social problems inside office and outside office, that can address the challenges that we are having at this point of time. Over to you, Bani.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So that, I think, segues well into the infrastructure point that I'd like to bring up. And this is something that we spoke about yesterday as well, and I'm going to start with Steshani. So one of the things that we see in Sri Lanka, and Mark, if you do have a view on that, please do add in after Steshani, is the infrastructure in terms of we constantly are reminded that girls are not really safe transport when it comes to transport, traveling in the night, things like that obviously play a part in a woman making a decision, whether it be STEM or otherwise. Is it worth me actually coming to work? Steshani, do you think you want to share a little bit about what you think, if we're talking about NGOs, if we're talking about our government, should be focusing on to try and improve infrastructure in general, because we all agree that it has a lot to do, because as much as we take care of them really well in the company, they spend 50% of the time outside the company. Steshani, do you want to just give your insights on that a little bit?
Well, I think, it's more, it would help to have like maybe an awareness campaign and the importance of respecting each other, and maybe to also remind the population at large, at the end of the day, the safety aspect is because a lot of females have told me, even when they are using public transport, they have men saying inappropriate comments and hearing at them and so on and so forth. And sometimes even to the extent of following them. So, I mean, a lot of our female staff actually have faced various issues. So they have to be smart about it. But right now, of course, if they're working till late, we do provide them, office transport. We are very much conscious of the fact that we need to make sure their immediate family also feels safe about the fact that they're working with us. So it's a matter of having that awareness. Look, a female out there, at the end of the day, it can be your mother, it can be your sister. So would you do that to your mother? Would you do that to your own sister or daughter. So I think you need to, there has to be a perception change and actually respect, men need to respect the female as they would respect another male entity, and be conscious of the fact, maybe like the gentleman from Bangladesh pointed out, some females need to be much more confident in themselves. So if they are not confident in themselves, they might be the ones who are more afraid to be, going about in public transport. Because, it doesn't necessarily have to be in Sri Lanka, anywhere in the world. When you are a female, at least my experience has been, because when I was interning in the US, I was below 18 years of age, right? So a lot of and I was privileged to be able to intern at that age. But one of the questions was, okay, she's not an adult yet legally. And I was very fortunate that my parents were happy to send me to intern at that age. But one of the concerns was the fact of safety, because the offices were located in Harlem. So I got a full debrief as to how I should walk, how I should appear to be confident, how to protect myself in any environment. So it takes, the role of, I'm going to bring in the role of parents as well, because in one of the women's chamber evenings on Sunday, actually, there was a participant who said, it's the fault of women that, or the mothers, of not raising respectful husbands or men. But I beg to differ, because I believe it's the role of the father and the mother in raising the boys and girls alike, and to respect both boys and girls and men and women, right? So it takes parents, it takes teachers, it takes society and government at large, and even the education system has to be geared towards that. So I think, how we say, as much as we are ensuring to educate both boys and girls in, to equip themselves in terms of a proper job in the future, whichever field they choose, I think this is something you can incorporate into the education curriculum of, human decency and respect for each other.
So a more holistic education
is kind of a holistic form of education. Otherwise, even a couple of years ago, I had the privilege of attending many international conferences. And one, if you take 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, one of the ways in which they tried to, for example, reduce abuse towards women was the fact that to educate the men, right? But then, when you speak to organizations helping women in abusive situations or marriages or families, most of the perpetrators or the abuser tends to be from a very, very educated background. They're CEOs of companies, some of them are professors, they're in the top of their respective fields. So this is why I actually bought in the fact that the education system also has a lot to do with it, because in terms of teaching respect, basic humanity, kindness, being thankful, grateful for things you have. So these things make a difference, and also maybe your spiritual belief in terms of whichever the religion, in terms of how to tackle things in life. I think these are things that actually mold the individual overall. So it takes all of that, I would say.
Thanks so much, Stashani. If I may move over to Mark a little bit. Mark, if you could just bring in the education perspective. I'm sure you have seen what we have in Sri Lanka with education, the pros and the cons, but also maybe a little bit of comparison to the rest of the world. In countries where some of these base infrastructure issues don't exist, could you kind of give us a take on what do you see some areas of improvement in education, kind of leading to some of the things that Stashani mentioned that we could kind of take away from this session, some little bit more detail based on education, since you are very much in the academic space and hiring people with high academics also. I'm hoping we can just delve into a little bit about advice, or I'm going to say, yeah, I would say advice and commentary to, the ministries of education, NGOs that are focusing on education, etc. Any thoughts on what should be the areas of focus?
Sure, thank you. Just this discussion has been really excellent, and I've found myself listening very intently, because there's many useful reflections I've heard that are useful in trying to navigate many of the challenges that we face in this space as an organization. So thank you to everyone. I think in terms of education, I think the comment has already been made that addressing this challenge to the educational system starts at the very beginning of the educational system with small kids and in primary school, and making sure that from that point, as people enter school and start experiencing school, that both girls and boys have the same exposure to learning about, at that point, the beginnings of STEM teaching. So that it's reinforced that it's for everybody. It's that the expectations for girls and for boys in learning about STEM and in the possibility of success and building career pathways is the same for girls and boys. And so I think it starts at the beginning of the educational system. It has a counterpart at home, as we've heard too. And that part of that is about building enjoyment of these subjects, and enthusiasm, and an acceptance, both from men and from boys, of the appropriateness and the value of having women peers in these careers, and vice versa. And I think it's important to remember, you asked me to reflect upon how this relates to experiences in other parts of the world. And remember, I'm from Canada, and I'm of the generation that I'm from. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and these very same questions were being asked there at that time. Obviously, there's differences in context in a variety of ways, but these challenges and the journeys that we have as societies, we may be at different stages of them, but we all have these journeys, and indeed we're still on them in other parts of the world too, for sure. And these same questions are asked: how do we get girls enthusiastic about STEM, about coding? You hear this discussion a lot. And I think that tracks through to the experience we now have as leaders in our organizations, and still grappling with those same kinds of questions and issues, and how we address them with our colleagues and with our teams and with our peers. We see that continuing. I just would like to also, in the sense then of that pathway, going from the beginning of the education through to the part of your education that is in your career, in your work. And there's been comments about the importance of leadership in this respect, and I thoroughly agree with that, and accountability around leadership, and the importance of mentorship, which I think is crucial as well. It helps to set the example. It helps to build the culture. It helps to challenge people's expectations. When you're mentored by someone, that can help challenge your perceptions and expectations. And we hear a lot about the importance of mentoring, in my field, mentoring women scientists, them having good positive mentors that may be other women, maybe female leaders in their field, etc. But I think there's also great value in having women mentor men, and helping to helping young men as they're coming through in their careers to put in place the right sorts of expectations around the professional fields in which they work. And that kind of mentoring is certainly that I've benefited from in my own career, from some tremendous female leaders who've instilled in me the importance of being very mindful and deliberative and proactive in these kinds of topics. So I hope that's a sense of thinking through education from the very beginnings through to, I'm sure, what we all do every day as well. Yeah.
So I think one thing I picked up from what you said and also what Steshani said is when it comes to the holistic education, empathy is a big part that I sometimes see lacking. I would say, especially, I grew up here most of the time. I did study abroad, but that element of the holistic soft skills need to be, and also the whole collaboration piece, where, it's not about individual succeeding. There is a lot of competitiveness in the education system, but also bringing in collaboration and teamwork. And these are points I'm reiterating, because I think this journey cannot be gone through just by private sector alone. Governments do need to get involved when it comes to education, when it comes to infrastructure, etc. I just want to leave you all with 2 data points that I have from the world of diversity and inclusion that I work in. I think we all agree, and Forbes research has said that gender diverse teams make better decisions 73% of the time, which I think all of us have seen in our workplaces, and research proves it as well. And then, as much as we all say this is nice to have, there is a business case for this just as much. Financial Times quotes that 1% improvement in gender diversity will improve sales revenue by 3%. So these are tried, tested, researched over years, generations, decades. So it is not just a conversation that we're having because we think it's nice to do, because there is a lot of business research that has gone into why diversity is so important, and more importantly, why inclusion needs to come along with diversity. So if I were to break the two, diversity tends to be more the measurement of the differences, but inclusion is all about celebrating those differences and being able to work together and to be able to collaborate. I know we are almost coming to the end of the session. Before I kind of ask you all for your final comments and thoughts, can we open it up to questions? Are there any questions from the audience? I'm sorry, I don't see any other questions. So if somebody who's from the administrative team can ask the questions, if there are any. Just try to open question. Okay, I do see a question. Generally, I would like to really know what are the main impediments for women to climb up the corporate ladder, irrespective of any specific sector. When I myself am working for a bank, financial institution, having computer science and engineering background. So I guess this is about, sorry, I've lost everybody. Give me a second. Thanks. Okay, so if I may put this question to the two ladies in the panel as a start, what are some of the impediments that you all see towards climbing the corporate ladder? And maybe if you all have any experiences from your personal journeys, would you all like to share it?
Sure. This question I've been asked many, many times, and especially, during Women's Day, all the time we share these experiences that we have had. But I always start off by saying that the first barrier that we have is in our mind. And I truly believe in that because I think, first of all, that confidence level needs to be there, that, okay, I've gotten a job now. Can I reach to the top? Yes, I can. So this mindset, positive approach is extremely important. At the same time, we have also noticed, and I myself have noticed that being a leader in certain areas, that when we give some added responsibility to the women, majority of the time what happens is that women's biological clock and the career path, it kind of clashes at every stage. When you want to have a baby, maybe that is the time that you're given a promotion or something, and you think, I don't want to take more responsibilities because I have to look after my family. Majority of the time, this is what happens. And at times we don't want to take on more roles because we want to give more time to our family. And maybe there is also issue with the institution itself, maybe the infrastructure itself doesn't allow, right? For that reason, also many women actually fall back. So that's number one reason that I see. If you really want to pursue your career, whoever is asking this question, you be sure in your mind where you want to see yourself and accordingly set your expectation. And then we will see what the institution can give us to actually pursue that particular dream for ourselves, right? And from the institution point of view, it's extremely important that when we talk about diversity, we don't translate that into tokenism, because that's what's happening. We have a quota, 20%, 30% of women are already in our management team or in tech team, but they don't have the right responsibility, the authority, maybe the decision making power. And that is where we're also losing out. And that's why many women, when they're even given that kind of role, they actually fall back because they don't feel that they are part of the entire decision-making process, that they're actually making some changes, right? So it's important that they feel that I'm part of that whole equation. And so it's important that institutions don't look at it as just a number, but actually think of inclusion and diversity as something which will benefit the company, which has been proven through various research studies already, right? And when you think of innovation, which is what we are looking for the next 10 years, fourth industrial revolution, we'll see more automation, we'll see more innovation, more AI, ML driven, roles that will be required. And hence all these women need to upskill and reskill. Okay, even if you have studied in STEM, always think, am I employable in the future as well? Am I ready for that? So it's important that you also, bring yourself or take yourself from here to the upward levels in terms of your own capabilities and your competencies, so that you can compete. It's not only women, even the men. We're going to compete with automation. We're going to compete with machines, right? So we have to think more creatively. We have to bring in more innovation. So these are the areas that I think we have to think, and making each person accountable. Of course, needless to say that the environment has to be friendly. Of course, we have to make sure there's no discrimination as such, but the impediments are also in the fact that we have to take actions. So whatever we are saying needs to be applied as well. So it's not only in books, it's not only policies, it's not only quotas, it needs to be applied, and we have to see the result of it as well. And I think that would really help women to pursue their career in these fields.
Thank you, Rubaba. Stefani, do you have anything to add from maybe a personal reflection?
So I think Ms. Dalla summarized it very, very well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, to be all honest, she did a fantastic job in summarizing everything. So I do agree with her 100%. You need to believe in yourself, and you need to have like a vision and a goal of where you want to be and work towards that. I would add to that saying, have a couple of mentors, whether it's in the banking field or whether it's, I don't know, a spiritual mentor or a personal mentor. Have a couple of mentors you can go and talk to, guide you, give you feedback, because I think, like, personally for me, that has helped me grow, and continuously, like she said, upskilling yourself, which I also personally tend to do, and I, like, personally, since you're in a banking sector, maybe actually have a frank conversation with your superior or head of HR and genuinely ask, okay, where is it that I lack? Where do I need to improve? And set yourself targets. If they do give you feedback saying, okay, these are your areas for improvement, then really make that effort to, bridge that gap, and, hopefully that will help you achieve your goal. Because I mean,
Great, thanks.
I belong to an organization where we have proper succession planning, and it's not based on numbers saying X amount of females and X amount of males, we do, go on skills, and we identify those skills and help each individual reach their best and highest potential through various programs we have in place internally. And I've seen some of them go and come up with a bit of males or females. So I think I'm fortunate personally. So I would say if you're not within such an environment, look around. I'm sure you will find ways to make sure, you create that environment for yourself. Because I believe that if you try hard enough, you also can do that. So I believe.
Thank you. Just 2 points I want to reiterate to the question, one from Rubaba, one from you, is I think this was spoken about the growth mindset component, and that mindset is the beginning. And comment you made, I think is really important, is to go ask for feedback, look for feedback, because that's how you grow. We have a few more questions. I'm a final year undergraduate at the University of Peradeniya, majoring in physics while having a background in HRM. With my experience as an undergraduate, I strongly feel Sri Lanka needs to rise more opportunities for create more opportunities for girls and women to engage in industry-based research and business analysis. Would like to know the input of the Sri Lankan panelists on how they plan to contribute to this future.
So can I add to this, Pani?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so like many of the panelists pointed out, robotic process automation is going to be part and parcel of the way we do business. So, data is part and parcel of the way we do business. So analysts are going to be very, very high in demand. And as an organization, I know we are changing our processes and procedures to make ourselves more effective and efficient. And we will, currently we are upskilling our own employees to get to a certain level as well in terms of, being better analysts. So I'm sure even within our organizations, there'll be vacancies. So if you are in Sri Lanka, fire a call to Aiken Spence. Maybe you will find a position.
Would any of the other panelists also like to answer that question? I think it will be the same whether it be Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, to be fair, in terms of the kind of roles that are going to be coming up and becoming more in demand in the future.
It's happening now.
I think it's similar in Bangladesh as well, as you just asked the question. And I'm sure, Matapa, you would agree with me, right? More and more data is the new currency, right? And as our fellow panelists just mentioned from Sri Lanka, that we are looking for data analysts. More and more cloud computing is becoming important because there's a cloud revolution that's happening. Everything is moving into cloud. Security is an aspect that we are looking into very intensely. And of course, when it comes to software engineers, I don't know if you know that only probably 15% of software engineers is women. When it comes to computer science specialists, we have probably 25% portion which belongs to women out of the world's total number. So that is definitely much lower in Bangladesh. So we are looking for more women in these fields because that's the future. And as I mentioned earlier, AI is now being embedded, machine learning and all that. So how to operate and bringing that creativity lens into everything. Okay, we need technical people with creative mind so that they can bring about relevant solution to problems. And that's where we need more women participation.
Thank you so much. Any other comments on that, or shall I move on to the next question? There's one final question. Oh, sure, go ahead.
I could add a little to that. We come at this from a slightly different perspective. Our business is not technology. Our business is sustainability and sustainable development, and we're working on solutions that build upon irrigation engineering that build upon ecology, that build upon climatology, etc. But many of the tools that are increasingly on the horizon for taking that kind of knowledge and turning it into solutions for the big challenges around sustainability. Many of the tools that are talked about are increasingly, how can we deploy new digital technologies? How can we deploy artificial intelligence? How can we leverage big data to start answering and driving solutions around some of these big challenges? And so we're looking for people that can join those dots. We need people who can join those dots around, if you like, traditional scientific areas around hydrology and ecology, with driving new solutions at large scale for big sustainability challenges. And one of the keys to being able to do that is interdisciplinarity. So I suppose I would augment what we just heard from the other contributors to yes, all of that digital, but please also let's have people coming through the system who are happy to talk about, engage in, work with teams that are bringing together ecology, hydrology, climate, economics, social science, etc. Because that's the mix we need for driving sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Shall I go to the last question? We have, I think, the final question at the moment. How can companies tap into the recent STEM graduate pool, as there is a job mismatch in terms of entry-level jobs? Sorry, is there a job mismatch? In the IT sector, I find we don't have enough graduates graduating fast enough. Only thing is there is the whole lack of holistic skills, which we see the companies having to invest in. In terms of the other STEM graduates, do the panelists have an opinion to that question?
Okay, let me try. First of all, when we recruit young talents, like Ruby has a GT program, or most of the multinationals have management training program or something like that. Always we are open to any discipline. First of all, we don't try to restrict certain disciplines will come or not. Second thing is the question that has been asked, that IT personnel. At this point of time, IT is the most demanding subject, and they can fit into any area. They can be fit into HR, they can fit into sales and everywhere, because we are getting more and more analytic based, and their use of analytics, use of artificial intelligence, this has become a common thing for any discipline, any function. So from that perspective, I can say is there cannot be any gap. Rather, the gap will be in terms of demand is much more than the supply that we are having at this point of time. And therefore, Ruby has done one thing, because we cannot get as many resources from the market. Therefore, we have our own internal program to skill them up. So for example, what we have is we have a AAA program, and 75% of our women employees are that AAA certified. What does it mean? Analytics, artificial intelligence, and agility, learning agility. So these are the three. We have proper exam, and people has to pass this exam to qualify for that. Those who are coming from IT, as you can see, understand from this terminology, you can easily, become successful in that. So there's a few points that I can highlight.
Thank you so much. I think we are at time, or a little over time. If I may ask each of the panelists maybe to share a final statement or comment before we close. Let's start with you, since I have you on screen, Marta. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, for me, I'm quite hopeful. We have some, social issues to me and mindset issues. We need to work towards it, and I can see a clear progress happening in Bangladesh. But of course, all of us has to work together along with the government agencies. And if you can do that successfully, I think the process will be expedited. So I'm quite hopeful.
Thank you. Can I ask Mark to go next?
I think I'll just echo what Mahtab was saying about being hopeful. I think there's a lot of focus on this topic, and I think that that's raising awareness in really positive ways. I see that in our own organization, the larger organization that I spoke about that we're part of. There's a great deal of focus on this at the moment around creating accountability for creating both accountability for addressing gender and diversity issues, concerns, but also really building a culture in which there are expectations for everyone in our organizations to address these issues. And one of the tools that we're using for that, which I think is really useful, the more and more I understand how it's being used, is around transparency in organizational data around gender diversity and inclusion, and the way that's communicated across our whole institution is helping to shift what can be in this type of institution kind of old-fashioned. We can be kind of old-fashioned, and this new insight, coupling accountability alongside transparency of data around these topics, I think is helping to shift mindsets. So I also am hopeful.
Thank you. Rubaba, any final comments?
I actually had put down 7 points. I will not elaborate on the points, but just to reiterate what I've spoken about. The first thing that we need to focus on in order for us to reduce the gap for women in STEM would be to attract more girls at school level. So encourage them, reach out to them, create more awareness, and highlight role models is extremely important, as I had spoken earlier. And those role models shouldn't be talking to each other only like we are doing. We have to really speak to those who we need to encourage, right? So reaching out to the last mile, not only in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas, and to make sure that we include everybody into this journey. The third thing that is recognize achievements at every level, extremely important, whether it's in an institution or whether some women who has come up with very innovative, disruptive ideas, recognize that and show the achievements. And also empowering our teachers in the sense giving them the right training, the right material, so that also gets passed on to the students, and they should be able to also encourage the students to take up subjects like STEM and show them the future benefit that they can gain out of it, right? And we need more decision makers, board committee members, and that's something that we have to be very, very conscious about. The other thing is extremely important is be aware of the barriers and biases. I think this is something that we often don't remember and only we talk about it, but being aware of it within an organization, whether we're talking about society or institution, being aware, and whenever we see that this is being crossed, then we should also make sure that we raise our voice and make the changes. So we have to be the catalyst for change. And I hope if we follow through all these at an individual, institutional, societal level, then we should be able to reduce this gap in bringing more women in STEM.
Thank you, Rubaba. Shashani, do you have any final comments?
Yes, I think the panelists have again shared some fantastic points in terms of what we can do. So what I would say is for each individual, look within your immediate framework to see where you can make certain changes, where you can implement these points, because I believe you as an individual can make certain changes as well. So first start with that space, then see who you can collaborate with, who you can partner with to expand that sphere of your immediate sphere of influence, and be the change you wish to be and empower everyone around you to do the same.
Thank you very much, Shashani, Martha, Mark, Rubaba, so much for your time, for your candid, open thoughts around this, and also the fact that I heard all of you all not only work within your companies, but beyond your companies and at national level too. Thank you so much. And I think everybody said it. We all hope for a better tomorrow when it comes to women empowerment and bridging the gender gap. Thank you so much. Over to the coordinators.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Ratika to give the closing remarks from both local networks, UNGC. Ratika, over to you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Well, what would I say? Fantastic session. I have to say to all the eminent speakers that we had on this panel and the previous panel, I have to say you have done a fantastic job. You touched on the most important aspects of this topic. And both these topics are so critical for the future of the world. I mean, you know how it is, you know what it means to have gender equality. Just that was the second session. And we saw some amazing work that is done by two leading companies that have taken a really beautiful strategic approach in establishing and also working towards bridging that gap, the gender gap that really exists. And it is a way to go. You have to have a plan. Without a plan, you will get nowhere. And we saw that with both with the DBL group as well as Virtusa. And it was certainly a pleasure to really go through those two presentations. And the learning was exceptional. To all of you in this session on STEM, certainly amazing discussion. I cannot go into each, I wish I could, to go into each person's discussion, flesh out what was so important, but it would take me half an hour, and I don't have that time. But all I want to tell you is that we have touched on very important aspects of making space for women in the workspace, and also to make sure that they can pursue their dreams. We have to move away from this typical South Asian mentality of, I said this in the previous closing after this first session, but as a marketing person, I believe in repetition. So I'm going to have to repeat some of the things I said there, is that we have to understand that women do have dreams and we must make way for those dreams. We have to move away from that thinking of women being there to support the men in their dreams, to really support each other's dreams. And this is really key. We see that happening with the younger generations. They are beginning to speak up. They're beginning to pursue their dreams. And every one of you here today, especially the ladies, you're here because you were able to do that. There was support to get to that. And we need you to be mentors. We need you to mentor the younger population, encourage others like you to mentor the younger women in this world to understand that it can be done, it can be achieved. You must aspire, you must have ambition, and you can get there. And that way, if they have a plan and they believe in it, they can get there. We all know that. There's a very important aspect that I was wishing you would touch, and it was brought out beautifully. And Stashani, I thank you for that, and all of you. There is a role, a huge role the men have to play here. And I hope that next time we have a similar session, we would really touch upon the men's role in this as well, because it is so important. From the position of a father to a brother, that's where it all begins. That's where the security of a woman begins. And from there on, it has to be helping her to support her dream all the way to the very end. And that's where they can, and many of you here today, especially women, as I said, are there because you had that, most of the way. We need to focus on these aspects. We need to educate our men from early childhood on how to respect women, how to treat women, and how to work with them and how to play with them. that needs to be established at the early stages. It has to come through the home system, and we cannot blame it all through the education system, but the education system must also play its role. The issues that we spoke of are not common, as we know, to only this region. We hear it in governments in other countries. We hear it in the developed world. We hear it in universities where education is supposed to be so important for decent, establishing decent standards, if I may say. But we see it still rocking in these places. We cannot let this happen. We need to work towards it. We need to establish standards, and we must, as society, has such a big role to play. We have to pull together to do this. So without too much, because we've had a long session, it has been 3 hours for some of us, I would like to close with a statement. I would like to leave our companies, panelists and speakers with this. There will always be value and dire need for women in the supply chain and in STEM. With the world moving to digitization, we spoke about blockchain in the previous closing. I explained how that's going to impact supply chain, but it's not only supply chain, it would impact so many others. We talked about data, how important big data is going to be, and the role of data in artificial intelligence to everything. Women have a great place here. There is so much opportunity. We talked about the issues with regard to maternity leave and not being able to come back to work. But in the last year, we have learned that working from home is still possible for women and men. We need to continue to play this role, support women, because they have so much to juggle, so much to balance. And still, if they are to be considered successful women in this society. So yes, as I explained, let us be their allies and provide affirmative action to continue the excellent work done to retain and maintain women in all these arenas. And with that, I'd like to close and hand over to Charmaine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ratika. Thank you very much for the closing remarks. I'd again like to thank each of our panelists for being with us today. We've actually had 3.5-hour session. In this webinar with 3 segments. One was the supply chain and the gender gap. The second was the target gender equality program highlights. And the third was the STEM session and female participation. So thank you all very much for being here today, and we hope to continue our dialogue and discussions. These are very important topics that came up, and the discussions were very fruitful. It's a very learning experience for all of us to share and learn together how to go about for the future. We want to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and we want to have a strategy that we can focus on. Already the UN Global Compact has a 5-year strategy. We've just approved by the Secretary General. We're doing the operationalizing of that. And we hope with all of your concerted efforts, we can achieve a lot in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, as well as beyond the boundaries of this region. So thank you all very much. Have a good day. And we will be in touch with you for our next session soon. Bye-bye.